on, guys? This is Dr. Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com. Before we get to the video, please like and subscribe and make some comments on the topic today. The topic is top things you need to know about working out before you even start, or maybe you're just a beginner with less than, say, 6 months to a year. I find that we have a new generation of lifters coming along that are heavily confused on how to train smart, where to find information. I hope this video hopes to help you be able to make better decisions on this particular topic, and then also make more progress and create less injuries. So let's get to it. What are some things that you think about as far as what you would wish you knew before you started working out? My list is about 4 major things that all kind of interblend into each other. But I think if I learn these a little bit faster, and trust me, I learned them pretty quick, which was what made me a really good lifter. But a lot of people don't have access to this particular information as far as the hands-on principles are concerned. When I was a kid, there were no internet. You had magazines, and if you were lucky, you could find a Powerlifting USA where people were writing very educational exercises and workouts and giving you different things, kind of like Louis Simmons and Charles Poliquin, guys that I felt had to earn a right to have a voice and to teach other people, which was a huge component to them, because back in the day, if you wrote an article, say for Powerlifting USA, the chances are you were either a world champion, you were a doctor, or you were a coach that had multiple world records under your belt. Nowadays, we have fitness influencers with millions of followers that spit out a lot of, what I would consider bullshit, garbage information. A lot of newbies don't know the difference. Then they get 1, 2, maybe 3 years under their belt. They start getting these cumulative injuries. And then next thing you know, you have a problem that you got to dig a hole out of, or maybe never get out of at all. And so what are the top things for me? Well, 1, technique. If we look at technique above every other factor, we're already way ahead of the game. Technical proficiency takes a long time to master, and is why you see so many people not have good technique with major lifts and not know how to use the right muscles to do the lifts. The worst information you can possibly tell anyone is just get under a bar and see what feels right. Well, my whole point to this is that, again, the best thing you can do is probably not start with a bar. You start by doing an assessment and finding out which muscles you may or may not have in your particular hands in order to learn technique. Let's face it, if you don't have good firing glutes and strong hamstrings before you learn how to squat, you're probably going to be quad dominant. You're probably going to want to squat with your head down, and you're probably going to round your fucking back because your core is weak. Well, what if the first 6 months of lifting just entailed you getting all those areas up to par so that you have motor control over those areas before you do compound movements? Think of it like an infant, right? We don't teach an infant how to read a large book with tons of paragraphs and chapters. We go alphabets, then we go words, then we go sentences, then we go paragraphs, then we go books. And we teach our learning this way, but a lot of times we think we can start at the top on lifting, which is a really bad idea. So my point to this is, guys, is that put technique in front of everything, and you'll find you'll make progress way faster and way safer. The next thing that kind of falls along the same lines as technical proficiency is start thinking of your joints, your ligaments, your tendons, and your cartilage before you think about muscle. We know that these particular parts of our body adjust to training at a much slower rate. This means that pushing till exhaustion, fatigue, and failure is probably not a really good idea due to the structures that are actually holding the muscles together to pull on the bones. So if we know that ligaments, tendons, and cartilage adjust to training slower, our training regimen should be slow, methodical, and thought of in this area, which leads back to technique. A lot of times when you first start, the technical position that you want to put your body in is going to be the muscles that you have and the ones you want to hide, or your weaknesses. This means that just learning how to squat with a barbell right off the rip may not be a good idea. Just putting your hands on a barbell to learn how to bench and find the spot that feels good for you is probably not a good idea. Why? because most people don't have strong triceps and they don't have any control over their scapular muscles or their lats. So they're going to start the bench press, like everybody says on the internet, is a pec and a shoulder dominant movement. The problem is we're dealing with a population now that has so much anterior rotation due to everything we do in society is in front of us that the back muscles are not prepared to help support the pressure that the anterior muscles are going to support. Meaning, like for most people, their pecs and anterior delts are twice as strong as their lats, starting right from the beginning. This means that they're going to have screwed up bench press technique. They're going to want to put their hands wider because most people like just shorter range of motion. But did we ask ourselves, is it better for our ligaments, tendons, and bones? If the answer is no, it doesn't matter how much muscle you want to put on. Your technique needs to be protecting the things that attach the muscles, not necessarily just focusing on hypertrophy, which is about 85% of all the videos on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. The third thing that I think is a lesser known thought process, and the Russians call this CAR, which is called the current adaptive reserves. This means if you're getting into lifting and you were a 3-sport athlete from the age of 6 years old to 16, your athletic base, your ability to be coached, and the exercises that you can employ are going to be much more complex than someone that just sat on the couch and played video games and then decided they wanted to lift weights their freshman year in high school. They're going to be very far behind a person that's already been introduced to athletic endeavors. So your current adaptive reserve, in my opinion, is based on what you can recover from. So if you're used to 2-hour wrestling practices and you're used to 1.5-hour football practices twice a day, and you're used to swimming 3 or 4 miles a day in swim practice, going to lifting weights for an hour is not going to be that big of a deal. But if you're just popping off of the couch, it can be a massive deal and a big problem if you try to start too high. So current adaptive reserves need to be regulated and they need to be thought of. This just basically means you can't do what you can't recover from. And I hope that this starts to understand that there is a fine line between doing too much and doing too little. And as you get better, the line becomes smaller. This is why you need to look towards elite athletes, because they have figured out all of the small things along the way and have found the happy mediums in order to progress. This is why, in my personal opinion, you need to find guys that have made progression for at least 2 decades in lifting and stayed away from the majority of the injuries. This means they know how to train hard, they know how to back down, their technique is really good, and they also put recovery first, because there's no way you're going to last 20 years and be world class if you don't understand those 4 major factors. So the point is current adaptive reserves are very important. You can't do what you cannot recover from. The last thing that I wanted to go into, and I think it's super important, especially for this new generation, because everybody has a phone now. If you're trying to be a great lifter, stay off of TikTok, stay off of Instagram, and do your research on the people you're listening to on YouTube and possibly other educational factors. There's a lot of people that are taking a lot of drugs and doing impressive numbers, but may not necessarily know how to train. Conversely, there are a lot of people that have high levels of education, but have never really stepped foot in a gym and lifted any serious weights. Finding the person that has done both is not only difficult, but really narrows down the field in which the person that you want to listen to. So who are my top few people that I would listen to? 1, Stan Efferding. Not only the strongest bodybuilder to ever live, was also an IFBB pro and also a multi-million-dollar business owner. This means that his lifestyle, his diet, and his ability to juggle multiple things in life is beyond what most people have ever seen. This is interesting, right? The next one would be reading old things from Dr. Fred Hatfield. Now, Fred Hatfield was an older guy, but he had his PhD and squatted over 1,000 pounds in the early mid-'80s at 242 body weight, where the lifting gear was very minimal. Having a doctorate and having world records is another massive accomplishment, and one that I wanted to emulate in my career, which fortunately I did. Other people that I think are good to listen to would be Athlean X. He is a physical therapist, worked with the New York Mets, and now runs an amazing channel on YouTube. His stuff is more set for aesthetics and general population, but some of his stuff is really, really good. Another guy that I look up to in the industry is Gunnar Peterson. Gunnar Peterson and I have been friends for the last 3 to 5 years. He was the ex-head strength coach for the Lakers when they won the ring back in 2017, I believe. And his information is so vast, it's amazing. People that have been gone for a while that it's unfortunate that people forget is guys like Louis Simmons, who has helped make bands and chains a very large staple in many people's training, understanding the Soviet system of both maximal efforts, dynamic efforts, and repetition effort methods, which are very important. And another guy is Charles Poliquin. Charles Poliquin was the head strength coach for Team USA, Team Canada, and has accolades of over 20 gold medals in probably 20 different sports. So his vast array of knowledge and understanding is interesting because he could read upwards of around 4 to 6 languages, therefore collecting books that most Western people had never seen. So the point is that go and read and stay off the internet. Because in the reality of things is that the people that go and spend years, like myself, writing books and years and decades of training, have learned what's right, what's wrong, and what's applicable and what's not. And so, again, it's very hard to discern what's right and wrong. But to you beginners out there, if they don't have education, if they don't have high standards of lifting, and if they haven't been able to do it for a long period of time, I personally would throw their shit in the trash. This is Dr. Matt Wenning. Talk to you guys soon.